Hello everyone, I'm Jonathan Little for PokerCoaching.com. I just got my second vaccine shot, so I am ready to get out there and play some live poker. So today, we're going to be reviewing a hand that video blogger Brad Owen played at 5-10 no limit at Bellagio. Brad Owen is a phenomenal YouTube content creator. He has about 400,000 subscribers here on YouTube. That's about 5 times as many as me. Maybe if all of you click the subscribe button below, we'll get up to that number today. We'll see. He primarily plays live cash games in Vegas, but he also plays some tournaments, plays some online, and he's worked with me at PokerCoaching.com a little bit. We run various promotions, giveaways for his followers, so make sure you subscribe to Brad's channel at youtube.com/BradOwenPoker. You will not be disappointed. If you like, well, content like you're about to see, you will love his channel, so make sure you check that out. For those who do not know, I used to play a ton of this exact game, 5-10 no limit at Bellagio. It must have been 6 or 8 years ago. I would pretty much just show up there every day, noon until midnight, and I would grind it hard. It was a good game, made a bunch of money, and I had fun. Brad's doing that today. He is crushing it. Let's take a look at this interesting hand.
Ace-King offsuit in the cutoff. It's a terrific hand worth raising with. I make it 30. Dan calls on the button. The big blind calls as well. 3 of us are going to the flop.
All right. We raised to $30 in the cutoff. Perfectly fine, perfectly standard, exactly what I would do. We are playing about $1,500 deep total, 150 big blinds. If you are playing smaller stakes games, as many of you tell me you are in the comment section, and your opponents will call bigger raise sizes with a bunch of garbage, feel free to raise to 4 big blinds or 5 big blinds to just extract more value. But if you're playing against good players who are trying to win at poker, who are not really, really bad, you need to use more fundamentally sound strategies, and that's typically going to result in about a 3 big blind raise size.
Dealer puts out Ace-10-7 rainbow. We have top. The big blind checks.
Top, here we go. All right, this is a pretty common scenario where we're going to be playing multi-way with a pretty good hand, but a non-nut hand like top pair, top kicker. This is a spot where a lot of people mess up, and they bet something like $30 because they want to get called, right? But that is not what you should be doing at all in this scenario. You should actually be betting on the bigger side, because if you think about the range of hands your opponents are likely to have, they're likely to have an ace or a 10 or a 7, and no one's going to fold that for $65 or so into the $95 pot. Also, they could easily have a hand like Queen Jack or Jack 9 for a gut shot straight draw that if you bet something like $30, they're going to be getting really good odds to call, and if they do happen to spike on you, say a king comes and they're sitting here with Queen Jack, right? You make 2 pair, they make it straight, and you're going to get taken for a ride. That would be really, really bad. So when you're playing in multi-way pots like this, and you know you're going to be betting with mostly your good made hands and a few draws, you typically want to be betting on the bigger side. When the pot's 95, I would go something like 65. To make sure you know when to continuation bet and how much, I have a quiz for you to take. Head over to pokercoaching.com/cbetquiz to test your skills to make sure you are not screwing up this very common spot. Let's see what Brad does.
At 50 for value, the button.
Brad goes 50. I would have gone just a little bit bigger because of, again, your opponent's range connectivity. On connected boards and high card boards, your opponents are really likely to have something, and if they have something like an ace, a 10, or a 7, they're just not going to fold to any reasonable bet.
And big blind both call. It's hard for us all to have aces.
Both call. Brad says it's hard for you all to have aces. I completely agree. And when you go 50, I'm not going to say they're going to call with like bad gut shots like 8-6 of hearts for, just terrible gut shot, but they will still stick around, I think, with Queen Jack for a gut shot, King Jack, King Queen, Jack 9, Jack 8. All of these will definitely stick around. 9-8, obviously. And some hands even like backdoor flush draws. A lot of these gut shots will have backdoor flush draws. And they're also going to call with any ace, any 10, most 7s. They may fold out something like 7-6. But if you give a lot of the players in live cash games 8-7 for bottom pair, pretty bad kicker, they'll still just stick around. So in this scenario, when we do bet 50, we're going to be against a very, very wide range. So we have to be a little bit cautious on a lot of turns because, like say the turn's a random 8, they could easily have Jack 9 or 8-7 or 10-8, right?
Turn is the king of hearts. We make top 2 pair, but Queen Jack makes it straight. The big blind checks. My hand is too strong to check.
I'm too strong! Too strong! I want a victory!
I put 140 out there.
All right, turn the king. giving us top 2 pair, clearly a very, very premium hand. And we definitely want to keep betting. Some people look at this and they think, oh no, I could be against Queen Jack. Yeah, you could, but you could also be against, well, all of the other worse hands. We pretty much have the nuts here. If you bet and get raised, it's miserably bad, but that's just not going to happen all that often. So we want to bet. Going back to the same thought process as on the flop, it's pretty likely we're going to be against at least one person who has an ace. And if someone does have a 10, it's going to be King 10, which is 2 pair, or Queen 10, which is a gut shot in a pair, or Jack 10, which is a gut shot in a pair. And if they have the 8-7 draw, or even like the Jack 9 draw now, those all have 8 outs. So we want to be betting on the bigger side again. Also, I'm not even sure we want to bet a hand like Ace Jack on the turn. Ace Jack's probably close, but like Ace 9 is definitely a check on the turn because it's kind of likely we're beat. So in this spot, we're going to be betting very polarized, meaning we're betting our best hands and some draws. I know there aren't a ton of draws here, but this is a spot where I do think we want to go on the bigger side. Brad goes 140. I think 140 is a solid bet size here. I may even go a little bit bigger again, but I like this. Interestingly enough, if you are on the button, in this hand we're against the button and the big blind, if you are next to act after a sizable turn bet from Brad, not from Brad in particular, but from anyone, in this scenario, you should probably make pretty tight folds because you have to worry about the big blind having a decent hand as well. So like say you're sitting here on the button with ace 9 suited, right? It's a spot where you probably just need to fold to a big turn bet. There's a lot of value in these multi-way pots in just folding early and getting out of the way. What a lot of people do wrong is someone will bet big on the turn after betting the flop into multiple people. Then they'll just stick around with top pair no kicker. And top pair no kicker in this spot is going to be in pretty bad shape because Brad, if he's competent, which he is, either has a very good made hand, which he loses to, or a draw that has plenty of equity. And if you have a hand like ace 9, you even block 9-8 and jack 9, right? So just an easy fold.
That's a bit too much for the button. He folds. Price seems fair for the big blind. He calls. We're heads up. The river is the 10 of diamonds. It's not particularly great. The big blind checks. Thinking back, I'm not sure what 10 my opponent will really have. I bet flop and the button called, so it'd be very ambitious for the big blind to overcall with a single 10 and think it was good. I suppose that he could have a 10 with a backdoor flush and straight possibility, like Jack 10 or 10-9 of spades, for instance, but a lot of those hands would give up on the turn. It's more likely I'm up against a worse ace whose kicker won't play.
All right. Let's pause right here and analyze this. Brad has a little bit more analysis, but let's start right here. Would the opponent call the turn with King 10? Obviously, yes. Queen 10? I think so. And Jack 10? I think so. Maybe not. Some people will fold out those. But I think it's pretty reasonable that those hands would definitely stick around. However, it's also pretty reasonable that your opponent could have an ace, right? Check call flop, check call turn. That makes a lot of sense. They could also have some total garbage like 9-8 or Jack 9, whatever, all the busted draws, but you don't really care about that. So in this scenario, my main concern is how do I get value from an ace? And unless your opponent thinks you're especially loose, aggressive, bluff happy, you probably need to bet on the small side. Because if you bet big, like let's say 400, they're going to realize even a hand like ace queen is just chopping, and you should probably make a snug fold, especially given Brad could easily have all the nuts. Pocket aces, pocket kings, pocket tens, ace 10, king 10, right? Brad could have all of those hands. So this is a spot where I think, especially in most live cash games against most non-professional poker players, you probably want to use a small size of something like 200 or 225. And I think that's going to result in you getting called a lot of the time by an ace. And as you bet bigger than perhaps like 250, I think that's going to start making the ace-x fold, which is the exact hand you're trying to get called by. Also, every once in a while when you go small, your opponent may call like king, queen, or king, jack, which would be great. And also, if you bet and get raised, you want to make sure you're losing the minimum against a 10, because you could be against the 10s, right? This is not a spot where you're like, know you're printing money. Well, you are printing money, but this is not a spot where you have the best hand every single time you bet, but that's okay, because there are plenty of ace X and perhaps king X that can call a small-ish bet.
I remember in the last hand of the previous vlog,
we did not see this, but let's just listen to this.
I overbet pot on the river because I thought my opponent had the same hand as me and wanted to get him off a chop. Here I bet 400 with the reverse mindset. I want my opponent to think that I'm trying to get him off a chop, that we both have aces with kickers that won't play, since the board is paired and there's a king out there.
Okay, let's talk about this leveling war type concept. I personally try to just not get involved in leveling wars because I don't know how my opponents think. Here, Brad says that in a previous hand, I made a big bet to try to get my opponent off of a chop. I'm going to presume the opponent saw that, otherwise it's just completely irrelevant, right? If the opponent sees that we made a big bet here with like ace-2 on a previous hand and the opponent called with an ace and you chopped it up, will the opponent think that you're doing the same thing this time? Or will they think you're doing the opposite thing this time? And I don't know. I don't know what the opponent's thinking. This is some random player, never played against, right? So unless you know your opponent especially well, or you have some very long history where you've done the same thing over and over and over and over and over again, such that your opponent realizes, all right, this is just how he plays, I just don't get involved with these leveling wars whatsoever. Because like, say for example, you're on the river and you bet 75% pot and your opponent calls and they see you're bluffing. Next time you bet 75% pot, are they going to think you're bluffing or are they going to think you have the nuts? I don't know, right? I mean, I have no way of knowing. If they've seen you bet 75% pot on the river 12 times out of 12 with a bluff, I would recommend changing it up and doing that with only the nuts. But that's not what's happening here. This is some like short time frame where we're getting involved in a short time frame leveling war. And I realize it's relatively easy / logical to get involved in this in live poker because you're seeing the same, like you don't see all that many hands and you're trying to make the most of whatever information you have. But I think a lot of people overvalue this information or this leveling war type concept. And for that reason, like I said, I just would have bet 200. Even if my opponent saw me make a previous play 30 minutes ago with it in the spot that Brad outlined, I just think it doesn't matter all that much. Let me know in the comment section what you think about this because I don't get involved with this. I know a lot of other players who just don't get involved with this. They just try to play their hand in a fundamentally sound manner, adjusting for whatever the opponent does incorrectly. But that implies you actually know with a high degree of certainty what the opponent does incorrectly. And here, I don't know if our opponent's going to overcall when we bet 400 or if they're going to overfold. I do know when we raise pre-flop, bet the turn, bet the river into multiple people, and we use a big size on the river, we should be really polarized. So either the nuts or the effective nuts or nothing. And that should make our opponent even like fold out some ace-x here. So if they're going to fold out ace-x, then clearly this is not a good bet size. But if there's this leveling war going on and Brad has accurately figured it out, then, you know, Brad makes an extra $200 out the door. So it's a tough spot where maybe I leave money on the table or maybe I'm doing it right. I don't know. Let me know in the comment section. So Brad does go for the big bet 400 into 525.
Something unexpected happens. The big blind raises to 950.
Okay. Now we get check raised. The opponent is basically all in here. If we were really deep stacked, funny enough, I think this ace-king may actually be a reasonable hand to bluff re-raise. Because whenever you are playing really deep stacked, you essentially just want to block the nuts. What are the nuts here? It's going to be an ace, well, pocket aces, pocket kings, and pocket tens, right? And if you have a blocker, if you have a 10, that's not a hand you want to bluff re-raise with most likely because that can just easily call the raise. So ace-king, I think, becomes the most viable bluffing hand. Ace-7 as well. These are hands that block your opponent from having full houses, right? Obviously, you don't expect to be against pocket aces or pocket kings all that often, but, you know, every once in a while you will be. But pocket 7s is a pretty likely hand that would consider going for this. So this is a spot where, like, basically no one bluffs. But if you're playing really deep stacked against really good players, maybe you should mix it in because give your opponent a hand like 10-7, right? If they check raise the river and get jammed on for $5,000 or something like that, it's a pretty bad spot because they only beat a bluff. And if they think you never bluffed, it's actually a fold. Anyway, that's not what we're looking at here. We have to put in $550 to win a pot that's going to be, what, $2,400 or so? So we need to be good like 21% of the time. So what would you do in this spot? I want you to think about this and write your answer in the comment section below. In this spot, would you fold or would you call? All right, what did you decide? Either way, going through this active learning process is going to go a long way to helping you improving your poker skills. And at my training site, pokercoaching.com, we have over 1,000 interactive hand quizzes, very similar to this. Also, we have lots of courses. We have a cash game masterclass where we have lots and lots of short parts to the video, or short parts to the course with quizzes after every single part to ensure that your poker skills are progressing. I'm actually having a big sale right now for Cinco de Mayo. Check it out at pokercoaching.com/Cinco to get a very, very big discount on pokercoaching.com because I want you to get in there, study, and improve your skills so, well, you can win all the money. This is a spot where I think it's just a pretty easy fold. It's annoying that this is how this hand played out, but if you think about this from the opponent's point of view, Brad raised preflop, continuation bet the turn, and now blast the river. Brad should be really polarized. If Brad is really polarized, the opponent does not need to bluff with the marginal made hands like an ace, because that beats the random bluffs that Brad could have, like, I don't know, 9-8 or Jack-8 or Jack-9. So he's essentially taking whatever hand he has and is raising into Brad's value range. Because if Brad has pocket aces, pocket kings, pocket tens, ace 10, king 10, 10, 7, he's just not folding, right? So even raising a hand like a 10, like a weak 10 here, I think is kind of optimistic. So that means the opponent should have a pretty strong hand. What is a pretty strong hand here? Probably like a good 10 or better. And I do think the opponent could have king 10 or queen 10 or jack 10. Brad seemed to kind of ignore those hands on the turn, I think. But they could have it, right? And the thing is, even though it's kind of unlikely the opponent has king 10, queen 10, jack 10, just because there aren't that many combinations of it, when they check raise the river against a very polarized range, all of a sudden their likely range shrinks up a lot to be very premium hands. Also, would they check raise bluff here all that often against a very polarized range that contains all the nuts? Seems unlikely. There are a lot of spots that come up like this in poker where, let's say our opponent does have one of the random nut hands. There's not all that many combinations of it. But the way they played the hand, they're just really likely to have it. I reviewed a hand a while back with Kym Lim where she had quads on the river and it got like 6-bet on the river or something. And she folded. And there were 2 combinations of straight flushes available. And a lot of people in the comment section said something to the effect of, it's really unlikely. The odds of them having a straight flush against their quads are 1 in a billion or whatever it is. And yeah, pre-flop, but whenever it gets 6-bet on the river, all of a sudden the odds become like, I don't know, 70-30. It's like really, really likely your opponent has one of the super nut hands whenever they decide to blast it like this. And this is not quite as extreme of a scenario, but I do think it's very easy for the opponent to have a 10, and given they're basically all in for not a whole lot more, I think it's viable for them to check shove with a lot of the 10s. So this is an annoying spot, but I think you just got to fold. By the way, it is okay to bet the river for value with ace-king, with the idea that you're going to fold if you get raised, because when you get raised, you're just entirely beat, or mostly entirely beat, and whenever you bet and get called, you win a lot, because your opponent could easily have an ace. That said, I don't know if I love the $400 bet, because I'm not sure if the ace-x calls, but assuming they are going to call the $400 bet, then I think the $400 bet was actually very good.
It's gutsy because I can have 10s, aces, kings, 7s, ace-10, queen-jack, and ace-king all in my range the way I've played this so far. The opponent can't have a ton of those hands in his range because he would have 3-bet pre-flop or likely would have raised me at some other point.
While the opponent cannot have aces and kings, maybe 10s, they definitely can have king 10, queen 10, jack 10, right? And because the opponent is so shallow compared to the pot, they can justify jamming those, I think.
Problem is that people just always have it when they're raised on the river. Oh man, what kind of canned sardines did I open here? I guess it doesn't matter. The brand isn't important at a time like this. I'm confused. Is there some chance that my opponent doesn't have it? Could he be interpreting my bet how I wanted him to, which was for him to believe that we're chopping, and now he's raising, thinking that I'll have to fold the hand he'd be chopping with?
Like I said, I'm not a fan of getting involved in this leveling war. I think most people are going to look at this big bet, think you're polarized, and be done with it. They're not going to think I saw him make this play earlier with a particular type of hand, and then they're going to do the same thing this time or the opposite this time. Who knows? I don't know how people are going to react. I wish I did, but I don't. Sorry.
I don't know. There's too much going on. I close my eyes and call, pretty much expecting to lose. The opponent rolls over king 10 offsuit. His ambitious call with second pair and a backdoor straight draw almost gets him in lots of trouble because he was drawing nearly dead on the turn, but then gets bailed out by drilling a 2-outer on the river against the right player who just can't fold. That one's devastating. I'm mad at myself for calling the raise. My profit for the day is almost completely wiped out.
It's never fun whenever the dealer's shoveling the money to your opponent. I realize this video is already a little bit long, but one thing I wanted to mention here is that Brad seemed to, I'm not going to say focus on it, because I know Brad's a good, strong poker player, but he discussed here that the opponent was basically drawing dead on the flop, had to get the good run out in order for Brad to lose. And yeah, that's true. I think a lot of people get it in their heads that this was just an unlucky spot and it's going to happen very rarely, so like whatever. But in reality, like Brad mentioned here, when the guy check raises the river, he probably just has the nuts. Even though it's kind of unlikely he has the nuts, probably just has it, right? So don't be unhappy about getting unlucky here. And all you can do is make the best play at every particular betting round. And Brad played pre-flop great. He played the flop great. Maybe he could bet a little bit bigger. Played the turn great. And assuming his read on the river was right, or his leveling war thought process was right, he played the first part of the river right. And then your opponent gives you very new, very uncommon information. You just got to make the fold. It's annoying. It's frustrating, but you got to make the fold. Interestingly enough, if Brad actually bet smaller on the river, like I would have recommended, 200 or so, and then the opponent raised, I think calling it off then becomes a little bit more reasonable. Because when you bet small on the river, some aggressive creative opponents, which I don't know whose opponent is, but some aggressive creative opponents will think your small bet means a lot of marginal hands like an ace, trying to get thin value or something like that. And if they think that, they are going to end up bluffing you some portion of the time, so you've induced bluffs. But the way Brad played his hand, he induced no bluffs. He looked like he had the nuts. And when you look like you have a lot of nuts in your range, your opponent would have to be insane to try to bluff raise you. And in this case, as you see, the opponent just had the nuts, played it face up. When you get to the river for all the money, turns out most people play pretty face up. So that's going to be it for today. Huge thanks to Brad Owen for letting me use this hand. Make sure you like and subscribe his channel at youtube.com/BradOwenPoker. If you like this video, click like, click subscribe below. I'd appreciate it. Also click the notification bell. If you have any suggestions for other hands I should cover from video bloggers, put a link in the comments section and put a timestamp and I'll take a look. Good luck in your games. Have a great, great week. Thank you for being here. I'll talk to you next time. How would you like to have one of these championship bracelets from winning a major poker tournament? Well, here, I have plenty. I'll give you one of these. Oh. Couldn't quite get it to you. Instead, you're going to have to win your own. To get started, click the subscribe button.